Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this really cute crop crochet sweater using the half double stitch. Let's get started. This will be really fun. For this cardigan, I'm going to use 5 of these types of yarn. This is the Nako Bigger Tweed. It's 100% premium acrylic, and each ball of yarn is 100 grams and it comes to 195 meters. We're going to be using around 1.5 of these for each panel, and we're going to have 4 panels, one for the back, one for the front, one for the right shoulder, and one for the left arm. So let's get started, and we're going to start by making the shoulders, and then I'm going to show you how to make the front and back panels. The design for the front and back panel will be the same, and the design for the right and left arm will be the same. So let's get started. For the arms, you may have noticed that there is a balloon effect. So we're going to start off narrow, and then we're going to move wider. We're going to have sort of a balloon effect. The first effect will be at this point, which is closer to the wrist, and then the next effect will be at this point, which is closer to the top of that design. And then the length that you go for will overall depend on you, so it's best to take measurements. If you don't have measurements, you can look at a cardigan that you already wear and that fits you well, and then you can alter the measurements based on that. That said, we can get started and start working on this. And before we continue to that part, I have to mention that we're going to be using the HDC. That's the half double crochet throughout the whole stitch. That's for all the panels, so I'll show you how to do that in case you're not familiar with that, and then that's what we'll continue using for the rest of the project. Let's get into it. We are going to start with a chain of 30. At the end, I'll use a single crochet pattern to finish off the ends, but at this point you don't really need to worry about that. So you can leave a small loose end at this point, or you can go with a long one, but it won't really matter because at the end we'll use the magic knot to continue with that single crochet. So at this point you want to make a chain of 30, and you first start by making a slip knot, and then from there you start working on your project. We're going to make 30 chains, so this is how you do that. Sometimes before you get the tension right, it can take a while. That's the first chain, the second one, the third one, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, the ninth, the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Let's do 30. So this is the length of mine, the width. So I'm going to measure it against my own wrist because I want something that will fit. It should be snug, but then like not too tight, not too loose. So this works for me. You can continue with your design if you feel that it's not as snug as you would wish. And then once you're done with that, we'll move on to the next part, which is starting the rows. So with the HDC, what you want to do is yarn over. So we're going to skip this chain because it will count as our chain 1. Moving on, we'll be chaining 1, but for the foundational row we won't do that. So we skip this one, we count it as our chain 1, and then we move on to the second one. So skip number 1, go into number 2, just go in there, yarn over again, come out, and then you yarn over, and then There you go. That's your first one. Again, you don't want these to be too tight. You don't want it to be too loose. You just want something that's easy to work with, but it's not too tight. Neither is it too loose, because you also want that stitch to look really neat. So yarn over, you worked on the first one, so you can see the one that you worked on. You'll see that your yarn goes right into that. So skip that one, move on to the next one, which is this one. It's the same style, yarn over, you go in, yarn over. There you go. That's the HDC. They have double crochet. So move on to the third one, yarn over, and then you yarn over, and then there you go. There you go. Continue. Make sure you don't skip any of the chains, because if you do, it will affect the fit, and it will also affect the pattern, and you want something that's very, very neat. So skip that. I mean, we're not skipping, you're just looking for the one that's next, the one that you haven't worked on. You don't want to work on the same chain twice, because that will increase the width, but you also don't want to leave anything out. So you just want to be looking at your design from the back row. Yes, so you just keep doing these until we get to the end. Once you get to the end, I'll show you how to work on the next row. So keep doing this. You'll see that the design will already start showing. So just keep at it, and then let me meet you at this section. Once you get to the end, you'll turn your work. Turning your work means making sure it faces you. And then you'll notice we have the front row and we have the back row. Throughout this project, we'll be working in the back row. So what this means is, the first thing you'll do when you start a new row is chain one. Chain one means you yarn over, then you pass your hook through that yarn. So there you go. You have a new chain. So before that, in the foundational row, you notice that we skipped the first one, but we'll no longer do that. So you're going to, after you've chained one, you're going to yarn over, and then you're going to move into that first back row. And then you're going to continue with the same stitch that we have been using. So that's your first stitch. Then you move on to the next chain in the back row. That's your second one. Then you continue. There you are, number 3. And you'll continue doing that. As you can see now, you can see that the design is coming out, and it looks a lot like what I showed you in our sweater. This is the back panel, also the front panel, but you can see the design. Let me show you that in regard to the sweater that we're working on, so that you can see what I'm looking for. So you'll work like that for the first 8 rows. And so how do you count 8? In this case, you're going to look at where you started, and then you're going to count. This is 2, this is 4, because you go and you come back, that makes 1. So you're going to count 2, 4, 6, and 8. Once you get to 8, you'll come back, and then I'll show you how we are going to widen this part. So you just do 2, 4, 6, 8. Right now we are at 1. So when you come back, you'll be at 2. So do 8 of them. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Let's meet when you're here, and then we'll widen these so that you have that snug wrist, and then it balloons out to create the perfect design. So do that up to 8, and then I'll show you how to continue. At this point, you'll be at row 8. We counted, this is where you started your chain. That's where we have the tail here. So you don't count the bottom chain, you count these. The first time you went this way, and then you came back. So that makes 2, 4, 6, and 8. So at this point, we're going to work on the 9th row. So once again, you're going to chain 1. And then you're just going to continue with the same method that we've been using. So you go into the first one, and then that's the second, that's number 1, and then you go into number 2, Then you go into number 3, then number 4, number 5, and then number 6. So now this is where you need to pay attention. So you go into the 6th chain. We're still working in the back row. Usually you'll just do number 6 and then you'll go into number 7, but in this case that's not what you'll do. Instead, you're going to yarn over again and go back into the same chain that you worked on. So the number 6, instead of going into number 7, you're going to go into number 6 again. So that's where we are going to make our first addition. And then you continue. Now after number 6, you've done number 6 twice, you go into number 7. So you're just going to keep doing that. So you'll do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. At number 12, you do twice in number 12. So at each multiple of 6, so we are doing at 6, at 12, at 18, at 24, at 30, at 36. You'll just do that based on how long or how wide your sweater is at this point, because it depends on the width that you used here. In my case, I have 30 chains, but in your case you might have more. So you'll just do it at each multiple of 6, whether you're going up to 42, 60, that's going to depend on the width of your cardigan. So you're going to do that for this is row number 9, so you're going to do that for row number 9, row number 10, and row number 11. And that's when you're going to see that your sweater is going to become wider at that point. So let me show you what that will look like. This is what it will look like. So I widened it at number 8, at row 9, 10, and 11. So it goes out, and then after you're done, from row number 12, you're going to continue without making the additions at the multiples of 6. So your sweater is going to go wide, and then it's going to look straight from there on. So you're going to do that for number 9, 10, and 11. And then for rows number 12 to 25, you're going to keep it straight, which means you're not doing any additions. And then when you get to row number 26, I'll meet you there and we'll do another addition. So row number 26 is around here. So 9, 10, 11, do the additions at each multiple of 6. Then between 12 and 25, you're just going to go straight with no additions. And then we're going to meet at row number 26. Okay, when this is row number 26, and this is how you'll know how to count to row number 26. You look at where you started. This is the foundation chain, so you count 2, because that means you've gone and come back. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. So now from the 27th row, we're going to do the same thing we did on the 9th row. And that means that we're going to be making some additions. So this is the same pattern. So you'll see they're supposed to be generally the same. So this is where you're going to start making the additions. So you're going to do the same thing, such that on row 9, you're going to add at every 6, 12, 18, 24. That's every multiple of 6 all the way. That will depend on the number of chains that you have. So in my case, because I did 6 additions at every part, that was 6, 6 and 7 at the other one. So that comes to an addition of about 7, 6, 13, 20 chains. So in this case, my chain will be at 50. So I'm going to just continue doing the same thing. So at row number 27, I'm going to add at every 6. So that's 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, all the way. And then I'm going to do that for row number 27, 28, and 29. That will create this widening at this part. So you'll see that the sweater becomes wider at this part. And then after I do that, that's 27, 28, 29. I'm just making an addition at every multiple of 6. And then after that, I'm done with making the additions. So the rest of the sweater will be straight. So 27, 28, 29. From 30, I'll just continue doing the same thing, but I'll not be making any additions until I get to the end. And the end will be determined by the length of the of a cardigan that I already have. So you can measure this against a cardigan you already have, or the length that you want for this sweater, and that depends on you. The only thing that you'll need to remember is to make the additions at row number 27, 28, and 29. That's at every multiple of 6. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, all the way 60, all the way. It depends on just how wide your sweater is at this point. And that's it for the arms. Once you're done with that, you just make 2. So like in this case, I've already made 1, so I'm going to make another one. Once you're done with these 2, we're going to work on the back and the front panels. At the end, you're going to have an arm that looks like this, and I want to show you a difference. You can see this is the one that I had done before. You can see the way the ending looks. It's very different from what we've done right now. So I'm going to show you how to make this. So when we started, you had this end left after you did your first row. So I'm going to show you how to do a slip knot, a magic knot that's going to combine one side to the other so that we can make this a bit longer. It's actually quite easy. Maybe you've heard of the magic knot. So what you do, you're going to have 2 ends. So the first end, you're going to bring it over here, and then you're going to create, it's just a simple knot. So knot 1 on this side, and then you're going to use the same technique. So you're going to turn your work in a way, and then you're going to create another knot. If this seems so fast, you can always slow it down or repeat that part of the video. So then you're going to combine it so that let me make this a bit tighter, so that where the 2 meet, there will be a knot, and then you will cut the extra yarn. I usually use a nail cutter for this because it's way more specific, but it's more accurate. But you can always use whatever is available to you. Just make sure you just cut what's extra, making sure you don't actually cut the knot itself, because if you do that, then you'll have to start over. Yeah. So once you've done that, you have your knot. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to work on this to create a single crochet line that's going to act as our ending. So let's do that. So you're going to take, okay, you're going to hold your work facing you, and like we do when we're starting any single crochet, we're going to chain 1. So that marks the start of this row, and then you're going to go into the second row, second chain. So you go in, you yarn over, you come out, you'll have 2, and then you yarn over, and then you go through those 2, and then you'll have 1 chain. Then you move into the third one, yarn over, you'll have 2, and then you come through those 2, and then once again, now you're going to go into number 4, and you're going to yarn over, and then you're going to yarn over again, come through those 2. So you're going to do the same thing throughout until you get to the end. And when you get to the end, you want to leave a bit of a long chain, so you can see that the end, it will be 1 chain narrower than the other rows. But what you're looking at getting is this design, so that it looks very neat and it looks very complete. So you're going to leave a long chain, which we're going to use when we're doing the stitches, our blanket stitch, to combine the panels. But for now, that's all you need to do. Make it to the end, and then we're going to work on the front and back panels now. You may have noticed that the cardigan that I've shown is a bit narrow at the bottom and a bit wider towards the top, and it's a bit of a crop sweater. So for this design, I'm going to use 75 chains at the bottom, and then I'll show you how to increase this when we get to the 20th row. And in this case, when we're talking about 75 chains, I worked with what was okay for my size, and what's going to work for you will depend on your size or the size of the person who's going to be wearing the cardigan. So I will advise you to work with maybe a tape measure or a cardigan that you wear, so that when you get this bottom chain, as we're going to work on, you're going to measure it against what you're hoping to achieve. So in my case, we're going to work on 75 chains, but I want to let you know that you can always work with something that's narrower or much wider. So now let's work on the chain. Making the chain will be much similar to what we did for the previous panels. So we're going to start with a knot, and then we're going to work on making a chain of 75, which is going to be quite a long chain. So let's get started. Once you've made the knot, you just start working on your chain. So one, the chain is really a bit tricky sometimes. 2, 3, 4, 5. We're just going to follow the same procedure we used last time. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it's the same thing up to 75. So just do that until you get to what works for you, and then I'll show you what we're going to do for the next few rows. Now that I have my chain of a whole 75, we're going to get started on working on the next row. So for the first row, we usually don't chain one. We use this as the chain one. So we're going to use the first chain as the chain one. So we're going to skip that, and instead we're going to work on the second one, the second chain. So you're going to yarn over, going to skip the first one and go straight into that second one. Then you're going to yarn over, pull out, then you're going to yarn over, and through those 3, there you go, you're home free. So yarn over, we're going to go into, we worked on the second one, so we work on the third one. You yarn over, you pull through, you yarn over, and there you are, home free again. Yarn over, work into the fourth one, and then you yarn over, there you go, and then you yarn over, there you go. So we're going to continue with the same technique that we used for the front, for the left and right shoulders. So we're going to continue doing this for 20 rows. So you're going to do that for 20 rows, which means if this is the foundational chain, this is where we started, which means 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. From here, when you get to the 20th row, you can just count as we go. When you get to the 20th row, we're going to change things a little bit like we did when we're working on the shoulders. So for right now, just focus on getting these correct, and then we'll meet there. When you get to the 20th row, you'll notice that in my case, the cardigan widens at this point. So when you get to the 20th row, we're going to flare out. So let me show you how we do that. This is how you count to 20. You'll check where your foundation starts. So you'll count these as 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. So when you get to the end of the 20th row, this is what you do. You're going to start by chaining 1. And then we're going to continue working on the sweater as we were doing. So you're going to yarn over, go into that very first stitch, yarn over. So that's the first one. And then we're going to do that for the second one. And then for number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, and number 10. So now this is where things change. Once you go into the 10th row, the 10th back stitch, you're going to go into that stitch twice. So we've gone once for 10, so we're going to go again into the same place where we worked the 10th one. So that gives us an additional chain on the 10th stitch. So we're going to continue doing the same thing. After you've done that, now you're going to go into number 11, and then you do 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, up to number 20. And then at 20 you're going to do 2 stitches in the 20th stitch. So you'll do that for every multiple of 10. So we've done it at 10, so you're going to do it at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, depending on how long your chain is. And then that's for row number 21. And then you're going to turn your work and you're going to do the same thing for row number 22. So we're only going to do the additions for 2 rows at every multiple of 10. So at 10, at 20, at 30, 40, 50, all the way, depending on how long your sweater is. So let me show you how to do that again. Assuming we've gone to number 20, so you're going to go in, my apologies, you're going to yarn over, you go in, assuming this is number 20, and then once again you yarn over. Instead of going into 21, you're going to go back into the 20th stitch, and then you're going to make another half double stitch in there so that you end up with an addition. So that's what we're going to do for row number 21 and 22. And then after that, you're just going to work on your cardigan and keep going until you get to the height that works for you. In my case, this is what I went for. I measured these as a crop sweater, but you might want to go a bit longer, a bit, for something that has more coverage, depending on your height or what you prefer. So this is what we're going to do. Continue doing that. Once you've done the 2 panels, that's the front and the back, we're going to meet and work on the neck as well as the overall stitching together of the panels. Once you have 4 panels, it's now time to finish the design. So at the end, you'll see that this does not look the same as the other parts. I'll bring it closer for you to see, because we end each panel with a single crochet. So let me show you how you're going to do that for each of your panels. For every panel, you're going to go to the bottom where you have the foundation chain, and you're going to use a magic knot to make that yarn longer. So this is how you're going to do the single crochet. This is the top where we just finished, and then this is the bottom. So at the bottom, I'm going to use a single crochet, and this is how you do that. You're going to work your crochet into the second stitch, skip the first one, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through. That's for the first one. Then you move into the second one where you yarn over and pull through, but this time you also yarn over again and pull through those first 2 stitches. Let's do that for the next one. You go in, you yarn over, come out, and then you yarn over and pull through those first 2, and then you move into the third one where you go in, yarn over, pull out, and then you yarn over, and then you're going to pull through those first 2. It's a bit tight there because of the magic knot. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to follow that single crochet throughout the process, and this is what will happen. You're going to end up with this design. It's a nice finish to your crochet, and then you're going to make that the outside in the inside is going to look like this. So that's what we're going to use to make sure that the ending looks really neat. So once you're done doing that for all the 4 panels, the next thing you need to do is stitch them together, and I'm going to show you how to do that using a blanket stitch. So let's get started on that as soon as you're done with the single crochet pattern. There are very many ways to attach your panels together, but in this case we're going to use the blanket stitch because it has a seamless appearance and it will work better with the HDC. So for this, you want to start with attaching a very long yarn to your ending, although you can also use the yarn when free, but it's actually easier to do it when you've already attached the yarn to one end. And then you want to work with a long yarn so that you can have enough to cover the length of your panel. So I'm going to use a darning needle for this stitch, so let's get started. Start by inserting your yarn into the darning needle so that you're able to work in and out. So in this case, we're going to start at the very end. So what you're going to do, this is the end, so you're going to be matching each side to the other. So because the yarn originates here, we're going to start by going through the exact opposite side. You're going to be very slow with these. So once you've gone to this side, then you're going to work towards the alternate side. So we are going to go in there, and then once again come back now to the very opposite of that alternate end. So that's this, and then we're going to go again to the alternate end, pull through. Might get a bit messy at first because you're working with so much yarn. Just pull through slowly, and then once you've gone to the alternate end, you're going to come back to the opposite, the very opposite of that, and then you pull on the yarn. As you do that, you'll notice that it starts coming together. Since you've come to this end, you're going to go again to the alternate is this one, and then now again to the opposite end, which is this one. And if you're not sure, you can always just check, because you'll see this stitch coincides with this stitch. So if you pull through, you will see that they come together. Again, go to the alternate end. There we go. And then now come to the opposite side. Here it is. You always want to make sure you're not working with too many parts at once. Okay, again to the alternate, and then to the very opposite of that. Once again, after every few stitches, you want to pull it so that you can see if you're doing a good job. If you're doing a good job, you'll see that it's seamless. You'll see that you can already see that the sweater is coming together. There might be a few spaces because this is the HDC stitch, but other than that, you should be able to see that the stitches are aligning. So you're going to do that for your shoulders, you're going to do that for the front and back panels, and then for the neck and the front and back panels, I'm going to show you how to do that. So once you're done doing this for the shoulders, and you're also done doing that for the sides of the sweater, then we're going to work on the neck, and I'll show you how to do that once we're done with this. Okay. Once you've attached the shoulders to the rest of the body, you'll only have the neck remaining. And what you'll do, you'll attach the front and back panel on both sides, so that on this side you can see it's attached, but it looks very uniform because of the blanket stitch. And on this side you can see that I've also attached the front and back panel, so everything else is good to go. The only thing that's remaining is this space. So you want to leave a space that's big enough for your neck, but you also want to consider the kind of design that you want. In this case, I wanted a bit of a wider neckline, which is why I left a lot of space. You want to think about that. So in this case, I did half and half. So this is like half of the space and this is the other half. So you can do that if you want to have the exact design, or you can work with what works for you. Once you've decided what you want to work with and you've already attached the front and back panels and everything else, let's work on the neck. Once again, we'll be working through the back loop. So you want to leave part of the yarn hanging inside the sweater. And then now you look for the first back loop. It's usually easier to just work with the first one that you'll see. And in this case, we're not going to be working with this part, we're working with this part. You have to be careful about that, because if you work with this stitch, you'll end up interfering with the rest of the design. So you want to work with the one that's inside, the one that's facing up, and in my case it's this one. So I'm going to insert my hook in there, and then I'm going to pull the yarn through. But then once again, just like we did with the HDC, you're going to chain one. So once we've done that, we can now start working on the rest of it. So I've worked on that one, so I'm going to go in and work like I would with any other half double crochet. So you're going to yarn over, look for the next one, and look and just do the half double crochet stitch. So as you do that, you're going to be lengthening the neck such that it becomes taller, but you're also going to work with just the space that you created. So you want to make sure that the space is enough. Otherwise, once you do this, you might end up with a neckline that's so narrow that you can't even fit your head into it. So what you're going to do is keep doing this until you get to the very end. So you'll see that this looks very similar to this because we are continuing with the same stitch. So let's keep doing that, and I'll show you what you do when you get to the end. So as you can see, it's becoming much taller. Now let's assume that you worked on this HDC and you went all the way and you came back and now you're finally at the end. So how do you go about that? So to connect this side to this other side, what you'll do, you'll continue working on the HDC. Now you've gotten to the very end of that chain. So what you're going to do, you're going to work through these knots that you made when you were attaching the back and front panel or whatever is around there, because you want the flow to be continuous. So that's what you're going to use as one of your chains. And then you're going to look at the next knot that's available, that's at the base of the first chain one that you did. So that allows you to connect what you're working on with the chain that you've been working on. Oopsie daisy. Okay, and then you're going to chain one, and like you will do now, you're going to go to the top of that chain. So this is the top of that chain, so that's what you're going to work with. So you're going to do that. So at that point, all you've done is connect the two. There might be a space here. If there's a space here, it means it's probably okay because of the spaces. But if you don't want the spaces, you can work with more chains in here. But if you do that, you should also know that you'll end up with a wider neckline. So at this point, you've only connected the two so that you can see they are now connected. So what you're going to need to do is, again, you're going to need to chain one, so that you can start working on the next part of that stitch. So this is how we move on to row 2, and that's what you're going to do for every row that you work on, so that what you end up with looks uniform. So at this point now we're going into row 2. So the same strategy, and then I'm supposed to go all the way around and then come back here and then go to row 3. So you'll do that for all the rows that you want, and finally when you get to the length that you want, the height that you want, you can finally stop doing this. So if you have trouble knowing where you started, you can work with a marker. There are markers that people have available online that can help you know where you started. But if you started at this corner, it's quite easy to know where you started and where you're supposed to finish off your work. That done, you're going to have a full cardigan in just a few moments. All the best. And just like that, you're done making your crochet sweater. See, it's really easy. And like I said, the process was really fun. Have fun wearing it and let me know how your process went. Thank you.